Hello, welcome to a very special edition of The Ref Show. It's one of the most infamous incidents in the history of modern football. It goes back some 23 years ago now, but to this day, referees who have the misfortune to make more than the odd mistake at Upton Park, home of West Ham United, are serenaded to the tune of "Are You Hackett in Disguise?" Yes, that is our Keith Hackett. You are the ref's Keith Hackett, who's here to face some music now, because in an FA Cup semi-final in 1991, he did this.
And here comes Charles away from Slater. And now Gary Crosby for Forest up against Tony Gale. And Crosby had the pace, and Gale bumped him down. Keith Hackett goes straight to his pocket. It's, 23 yards out the challenge. Crosby was away from Gale, and Gale came in, and it's red. It's the cynical foul on the player in the goal-scoring opportunity. Tony Gale has been sent off the pitch in the FA Cup semi-final. What a sensation. Keith Hackett says that's the way the law is, you've got to go. And I'm not so sure that there won't be controversy about that decision. Bobby Charlton is shaking his head. Here's what happened. Did he push him? Did he bump him? Did he pull him back by the shirt? Well, he certainly went over. And West Ham United have been reduced to 10 men, and Tony Gale is sent off in the FA Cup semi-final. We'll debate that after the free kick, Bobby Charlton, because Forest have got an opportunity here. Parker has lined the ball up, Pearce is there, so is Nigel Clough, and West Ham, for obvious reasons, are rocking.
This was at Villa Park, an FA Cup semi-final between Nottingham Forest and West Ham United. Hammer's Tony Gale was the man very controversially sent off there. The score at the time, midway through the first half, was 0-0. Nottingham Forest, under Brian Clough, went on to win 4-0. That's how important that particular incident was. And now, for the very first time since, Tony Gale and Keith Hackett are together in the same room. This room, Gale has said over the years that he can never forgive Hackett for that incident, but this is the first time they've ever talked about it. Talked about this, let's remind ourselves again, midway through the first half, FA Cup semi-final 1991.
And here comes Charles away from Slater. And now Gary Crosby for Forest up against Tony Gale. And Crosby had the pace, and Gale bumped him down. Keith Hackett goes straight to his pocket. It's, 23 yards out the challenge. Crosby was away from Gale, and Gale came in, and it's red. It's the cynical foul on the player in the goal-scoring opportunity. Tony Gale has been sent off the pitch in the FA Cup semi-final. What a sensation.
Tony, Keith, a very warm welcome. Tony, thanks ever so much for travelling up to from London to Keith's home ground here in Sheffield. It's home ground in more than one sense, because it's a Sheffield Wednesday supporter, and here we are by chance at Hillsborough. Now, gentlemen, are we going to have a handshake before we start, or are you saving that until the end?
We'll do it at the end, but I only came up here because Keith's not allowed down in London.
We weren't going to mention that. And you've come all this way because you're really relishing this. Now, Tony, what happened there?
What happened there was, obviously I got sent off, Alan, and Keith made the decision at the time. But bearing in mind the kind of player that I was, and I think everyone in football will agree that I was more of an interceptor as a player, a central defender. I had a disciplinary record that was second to none, played 700 games for my clubs over the years. I was only booked 7 times, and 2 of those was for coming out a wall at the wrong time, so probably 5 bookings. And that was the only blot on my copybook, and probably made me infamous. Might have made Keith famous, but it made me infamous at the time, and it was something that I thought was unforgivable.
And you still can't forgive Keith for it?
Well, not for the decision, no. Obviously, we're human beings, and you have to forgive and forget. But maybe forget for me, but not forgive, because what happened was, the decision which I thought was wrong, which was my first FA Cup semi-final. I've been in 2 League Cup semi-finals, but not an FA Cup semi-final, and probably ruined the day of not only myself and probably family totaling 50 that went up there, but also fans totaling probably 30,000 of the 45 in there of West Ham fans, and probably ruined the day which I thought could have been a far better game as well. And you know, since I've gone on and become a pundit and worked for Sky and everything, I still look at the decision then and still think it was wrong.
You were going away from goal unmistakably, heading towards the corner flag. I'm going to ask you whether you think it was actually a foul in a moment, but that was Keith Hackett's verdict. Keith, do you look back on that now and wince?
Absolutely, for many reasons. As a referee, I wasn't one that sent players off willy-nilly. But I feel that even today I'm aggrieved by the fact that I was exposed as a referee by the FA. If this incident had happened the week before, Tony wouldn't have received a yellow card, it might have red.
So what happened in between then?
On the Thursday, Ken Ridden at the FA called all referees in to discuss this particular type of incident. Up to that particular point, we'd worked on the premise that in the Courtney final, where Willie Young brought Alan down, it was cynical, and we believed that this challenge had to be cynical. There wasn't the Dogzo offence that we talk about now.
This is denial of a goal-scoring opportunity.
Correct. This was like, it was almost last line of defence. And there wasn't the criteria to say moving towards goal, all those sort of scenarios. It was last man, foul, whatever. And therefore the exposure was Tony, the managers, even referees below the Football League level at that particular time, were not aware of this interpretation.
Were you aware of it?
Well, I think we were aware. Billy Bonds, our manager at the time, told us about it. But obviously, it's difficult to change the way you play within a short space of time, you know. And even the way that the game's evolved, and you see decisions now, and probably denying a goal-scoring opportunity or whatever, I still probably think I wouldn't have got sent off nowadays. And I still question the decision. Did I actually foul Gary Crosby? Because we both got up in a heap. And I wasn't quite sure what way the foul was going to go. So when Keith come up and done it, then I thought, oh, I can't
Your face was a picture. Tell us what you were thinking.
A picture? Well, I just couldn't believe it. You know, I couldn't believe it'd be someone like me getting in this kind of situation. I wouldn't have said I was one of the world's most aggressive defenders. We did have players of that ilk in the West Ham teams that I played in, but I think if you asked any of the West Ham players who was least likely to get sent off, it probably would have been me. That's probably might be a little bit of a dent on my reputation as a defender, but I wasn't quite that kind of a defender. I was what I deem as a footballing central defender. So I thought it was a poor decision. And at the time, what I did think, because it was the first decision from the Thursday to the Sunday, I thought it was a bit of an egotistical one at the time, in that Keith wanted to be the first one to make that decision.
Keith?
Which is what I thought at the time.
Yeah, far from that. It wasn't that at all. I mean, and I concur that when I was running and knowing that I've got to make a red card decision out of what I saw was a foul, I'm regretting it before I've got to do it. And then when...
You appeared not to show a lot of sympathy, actually.
Well, I mean, because at the end of it, well, that's part of refereeing. You can't be a shrinking violet in a corner. You've got a big decision, you've made it, and you've got to carry it through. The reality is that if you look at the faces of Tony, his colleagues, and thereafter the comments of the Nottingham Forest players themselves, because as I'm coming away from it, they're actually saying, Keith, that's harsh. That really is harsh. And I'm just sort of then spend the next 10 minutes in a daze. The reality was, there's no question that if you look at the game as a whole, it absolutely ruined the game. It ruined it for the spectators. And dare I say that I wasn't happy myself. And the culmination was, I came into the car park after the game, really unhappy, very unhappy in this particular decision.
Have you got any sympathy, Tony?
Not yet.
And I threw my bag into the car, and there was a FA guy there. I'll remain anonymous at this stage, and he just said to me, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Well done. If you hadn't have sent him, you'd have been suspended." And I always remember that, because I then had some choice words for him, because for me it then set a scene that in whatever I did from that day on, it had to be, you've got to inform players, you've got to inform the public, and everybody has a right to know what referees and how they're going to interpret the laws, and you should never change the interpretation of the law during the course of the season.
Now, you were a top referee, you'd refereed the FA Cup final, you were a FIFA international referee, and yet now you're defined by this one incident. Tony's heart's bleeding about this, but you're defined by that one incident, aren't you? West Ham supporters are not slow to...
Well, I mean, in the days after, following that, I had the death threats, which were taken quite seriously. The fans have a passion, and this is,
Keith,
we're talking about the semi-final here.
That was only me mum.
We're talking about a semi-final here, and there are lots of players who never get to an FA Cup final, and you've actually had a part in taking that away from them. The impact is enormous on the referee. I think most people don't understand that, we're the first to admit when we've made an error. But here, I'm unable to make an admission of an error because I've done what the FA expected me to do.
Did you speak to him after? Attempt to speak to him after?
No.
Billy Bonds, the manager, attempt to speak to him?
I don't think Billy went in there. Billy was one of those players who was a hard man both on and off the pitch, and whatever a referee's decision was, then he would abide by, and that was it. And basically, we had to get on with the game. There was no point in me slamming down doors trying to get at Keith and whatever. But I remember when Keith sent me off and I asked, what for? I wasn't sure whether I'd fouled Gary Crosby. I wasn't sure whether I was last man, professional foul, what if I had. But Keith was just saying off. And really there was no kind of explanation for it at all. Not that a referee has to give an explanation, well, you tapped him from behind, you pushed him on the shoulder or whatever. But at best, I thought it was clumsy. At worst, did I think it was a goal-scoring opportunity or whatever the rules are now? It's all changed, but no, I didn't. It was going towards the corner flag. And Gary Crosby was going towards his left side, and he's a right-sided player. So everything, in my mind, because I was that type of a player who had a footballing brain, was, how have I got sent off? And I couldn't get to the reality of it when I was in the dressing room.
And the fallout meant I don't think you refereed at Upton Park again, did you?
No, that's right. And rightly so, probably. For my own safety.
It was you who made the request.
No, I didn't make the request, but I was thankful that they didn't send me. But the reality of all this is that since that particular decision, the law itself has been, the criteria has changed, it's more defined. But let me make it quite clear, from a refereeing perspective, I still think that denial of an obvious goal-scoring opportunity is a bad law. It's a bad law for the playing side because it really has no sympathetic overview of the actions of a player. A player can make a mistake, he can make a careless challenge, and in the case of a defence inside the penalty area, that denial of the goal is replaced by the penalty kick. So it's an offence that the punishment is a triple jeopardy. It's a dismissal, it's a penalty, and it's a suspension. And that can't be right.
Certainly a modern day issue, but just going back to this Villa Park incident and the intervening years, I think you actually only met once, didn't you, on a football pitch after that?
Yeah, we played, it was funny, the club that I ended up with, Blackburn Rovers, it was the year before I went to Rovers. West Ham played Blackburn Rovers at Ewood Park. Lo and behold, the referee was Keith.
And he attempted some kind of reconciliation, didn't he?
Well, he did. I did clatter into the back of Alan Shearer and got away with a foul.
And according to you, he said something to you, are you all right, big man?
Yeah, he said, are you all right, big man? No hard feelings.
You said?
Yes, I can remember that.
I think they know what I said in the East End. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now then, we've wrapped this. I think you could talk all day.
There was a
all
little
night
bit of a
about this.
double whammy though, Al.
Yeah.
And we were speaking about it afterwards as well, and Keith cleared it up, which he could clear up again on camera, was that we tried to appeal against this because we thought it was the wrong decision. Still think it's was the wrong decision, because we were going for the second division championship at the time. The FA said to us, the referee doesn't want to look at the video, he feels he's made the right decision. I missed the last 3 games. We were without a recognised centre-back, West Ham, and we lost out on a championship winning medal because we would have won it, no doubt. And Keith has explained what really did happen.
I mean, quite clearly, I'll tell you that no one approached me to have a look at that.
So they were hiding
video.
behind you over that.
Well, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, we're cannon fodder at times.
Well, Keith, there's no hiding from you today, and thank you for facing that. Tony, are we going to get that handshake?
Can I do it off air? Otherwise, the West Ham fans won't.
I'll tell you what will give you the pleasure of. Are you Hackett in disguise?
Are you Hackett in disguise?
That's me.
And he is. But I mean, it was a sad day, unfortunately. But I'll tell you what, the West Ham fans came out with it with so much, not for the things that were said about Keith, but with so much credit, because they sang for the remainder of that game. And they were a credit to West Ham and to me, and I'd just like to thank them on film because they made it such a good. I'll shake
Thank
through you.
I can feel the electricity. It's not. Look at the distance. Come on. Thank you both.
It's been great to get an explanation of it from the other side as well.
Okay, Tony. Thanks ever so much, and Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll be back with another ref show next week. Won't be as good as this one. I can promise you that.